The nuances of the relationship between Deku and Bakugou are effectively summed up in one line when All Might says this.
To inherit my power, you've got to swallow some of my—
Wait, no, hang on.
There's a difference between being lucky and deserving. One's an accident, the other a reward. Never get the two confused.
They get the two confused, and that is the foundation upon which all of Bakugou's assholery is laid. While Deku recognizes that he worked for his success, he ultimately believes that he is in the position he's in through sheer force of luck. Bakugou, on the other hand, believes that he's the second coming of Christ, and that all of his success is just the universe giving him what he deserves. Both are wrong. Just as Deku believes that he's lucky while actually being deserving, Bakugou believes that he's deserving while actually being lucky. And it's this mutual mistake that leads to Bakugou being about as pleasant as a Tabasco enema. One quick thing to note before we really get into this video. This is an analysis of Bakugou's character as it is portrayed in the first season of the anime. It has nothing to do with the manga. I haven't read the manga. It has nothing to do with other seasons of the anime. They barely exist. So, if I read a single spoiler in the comments, I will wreak a vengeance upon you so great that it will be felt down your family line for 6 generations. Anyway, Bakugou's entire self-worth is predicated on the idea that he's the best. But where does this idea come from? The truth of the matter is that everything that makes Bakugou successful comes from pure luck. This is obviously true of his quirk, which was an accident of birth, but it's also true of his confidence and ambition. Look at how Bakugou was treated as a child. In the flashbacks we get of young Bakugou, he is constantly praised for his outgoing nature, his confidence, and his quirk. The only time we get close to seeing any condescension toward him is when young Deku goes to help him out of the river, and that's only condescending in Bakugou's twisted narcissistic mind. Nobody ever tells him that he's in any way deficient, which boosts his confidence and makes him believe that he's without flaw. Compare this to Deku, who suffers a childhood full of crushed dreams and verbal abuse, and you'll see what difference it makes. This constant praise continues into adulthood, the best example of this being Bakugou's encounter with the sludge villain in the second episode. After all is said and done, Deku is derided by the heroes for putting himself in danger, despite the fact that he's probably the only reason Bakugou is alive, and Bakugou is praised for his bravery, despite the fact that he didn't even know he was engaging in a fight. Furthermore, not only was Bakugou completely unable to save himself, he actively made the situation worse. Take a look at this scene and tell me how a sentient, skin-stealing jello mold started those fires. Yep. Despite that, we have someone who I assume is a legit superhero coming up to Bakugou after the fight and saying he would love to have him as a sidekick. Of course, this isn't good enough for Bakugou, who takes it as a slight, but it does still show that even when Bakugou utterly fails and almost dies, he is still held up as a child prodigy by those around him because he's cool. Bakugou's arrogance is further augmented by the fact that everyone around him just kinda sucks. Say what you want about these guys, but sweating nitroglycerin and whatever this is just aren't on the same level. Being able to compare himself to the losers around him allows Bakugou to come to the reasonable, if conceited, conclusion that he's just awesome and everyone else just isn't. The opposite happens with Deku, who suffers from internalized inferiority as a result of the fact that even whatever this is a more useful quirk than what he's got. That said, while Bakugou looks at the evidence and comes to the conclusion that he's a god amongst men, Deku refuses to accept that he's a hopeless loser, no matter how much the world around him might say so. This infuriates Bakugou. Bakugou believes that success is innate. Because he has never had to work to improve himself, he sees the idea of self-betterment as a pathetic delusion for losers who need to learn their place. We see this in various scenes, but one of the most interesting is this exchange between young Deku and young Bakugou.
Wow, you're so lucky! Your quirk is amazing, Kachan! When I get mine, I hope it's just as cool!
Whatever, Deku. No matter what power you end up with, you'll never be able to beat me.
Bakugou's response here shows that his idea of success is couched squarely in the realm of birth circumstance. He doesn't say, no matter how hard you work, or no matter how good you become. Instead, he effectively says, no matter how lucky you get when Super God doles out the powers. Even so, Deku's use of the word lucky here is dismissed with an exasperated whatever, suggesting that it doesn't even occur to Bakugou that there was a strong chance that if he weren't born with such a useful quirk, he wouldn't be nearly as successful as he is. It's also telling that Bakugou frames Deku's comment as a challenge. All Deku states here is that Bakugou is super nifty and that he hopes he gets a quirk as cool as his someday. Just like everyone else, he is exonerating Bakugou by wanting to be like him, but Bakugou doesn't see it that way. The idea that anyone else could rise to his level is disturbing to him because it makes him common. This is why it's so distressing for him when Deku gets into UA alongside him. He expected this to be his chance to show everyone how special he really was, but instead, not only does he have to share the spotlight, he has to share it with someone he has constantly derided as being a lower class of human. Deku's success undermines Bakugou's success because it tells Bakugou that anyone can achieve the same things as him and that he isn't nearly as special as he thought he was. This sentiment is further challenged when he gets into UA and is surrounded by people with actually useful and impressive superpowers instead of freaks. Bakugou initially gets a huge ego boost when he gets the highest score on the entrance exam until he's confronted with people like Todoroki and Yaoyorozu who are so good that they didn't have to take the entrance exam. This is why he reacts so defensively when Kirishima states that he and Todoroki both have top-notch quirks. Instead of seeing this as a compliment, Bakugou resents Kirishima for saying that someone else could be on his level. He's used to being in a class all his own, with losers like this as his only competition. Now that his classmates are chosen based on skill rather than being determined by what school district he was born into, aka luck, he's a lot less impressive by comparison. Which would be fine if he were willing to adapt to his new circumstances, but he isn't. Instead, he gets overwhelmed by the success of others around him and feels almost physically attacked by it. At the end of the training game, after Bakugou wins the fight against Deku but loses the exercise overall, All Might says this:
Whether you win or lose, you can always take something away from an experience like this, as long as you're open to learning.
This is the #1 quality that makes Deku deserving of his superhero status, while Bakugou is not. Bakugou is not willing to learn. When All Might / Yaoyorozu starts reviewing the exercise, Bakugou isn't paying attention, and he's the only one who isn't looking at All Might when he summarizes the exercise at the end. He also doesn't try to learn from his classmates' performances in the exercise. Rather, he has a mental breakdown as he sees how easily Todoroki outclasses Ogio and Hagakure. It's also worth mentioning here that Calamari describes Todoroki as intimidating, which is the word that Bakugou uses to describe the look he wants his costume to have. Bakugou sees his classmate doing what he wants to do, but better, and instead of learning from that and trying to become better himself, he freezes. No pun intended. Now, look at Deku. Deku's entire deal is self-improvement, particularly through study. Even after learning that there is basically zero chance he's going to become a hero, he spends his days chasing after big fights and making notes on all of his idols' battle strategies, Bakugou included. It is this willingness to learn and adjust to new circumstances that allows him to get the upper hand on Bakugou during the fight in the training exercise. Bakugou rushes into battle, not thinking or caring about what Deku's going to do because it's just Deku. Deku remembers the notes that he took on Bakugou, uses that knowledge to counter his attack, and throws him over his shoulder, literally grounding him and bringing him down to earth. We can also see Deku taking inspiration from Bakugou during the fight in the USJ. Now, obviously, jumping recklessly into Shark Boy-infested waters while yelling for people to die is enough to make Bakugou proud on its own, but pay close attention to what Deku's plan actually is. He jumps off the boat, then uses his quirk to change his trajectory in midair while simultaneously causing damage to his opponents, just like Bakugou did against him in their fight. His success here comes from analyzing what has worked for other people in the past and applying it to his own situation. He's clever and able to adapt to new circumstances, not just riding on his OP quirk. Also at the USJ, we see that Bakugou has learned nothing over the course of the first season. While 13 is getting in position to use Black Hole and solve all the students' problems, Bakugou and Kirishima team up to ruin everyone's day by thoughtlessly rushing into battle, just like he did against Deku, which makes it to where 13 can't use her quirk and gives Kurogiri enough breathing room to scatter the students to the winds. Even after that, Bakugou tells Kirishima that he's going after Kurogiri again, since it worked so well last time. It's like when the top student at a subpar high school gets into college and realizes that they weren't actually that smart, their school was just shit, and now they're stuck here with no idea how to study, so they keep doing the same thing and hope that sometimes it works. Not that I would know anything about that. We can also see Bakugou's unwillingness to learn by examining how he and Deku form their identities, particularly how each of them reacts to other people's interpretations of them. Bakugou's self-perception is heavily influenced by other people's reactions to him. More than anything, he wants to be respected and admired. This is why he reacts so violently when Kabaneri says that his personality is flaming dog crap mixed with garbage. He knows that he's rash, hot-headed, abrasive, selfish, and not particularly smart, which are all fine qualities if you want to be president, but not if you want to be respected. That said, he doesn't take this as a cue that he needs to clean up his act. Instead, he doubles down and becomes even more of an insufferable cock-yodeler. Bakugou wants to be admired, but when people don't admire him, they are the ones who are wrong. He doesn't have to change, they have to see his genius. Another example of this is when the reporter in episode 9 refers to him as that sludge villain kid. For all his talent and ability, Bakugou's public reputation is firmly seated in his failure, and instead of recognizing this and taking the opportunity to at least mitigate the damage, he tells the reporter to walk away, completely refusing to acknowledge that he is anything less than perfect. Meanwhile, Deku is more than willing to accept other people's perceptions of him and incorporate them into his identity. For example, while Bakugou completely rejects the name Ka-chan, Deku accepts the name that Bakugou gives him, first as a result of internalized inferiority, and then specifically as a giant middle finger up the ass of his rival, saying, "From now on, Deku is the name of a hero." This shows Deku's ability to see adversity as a means of getting stronger, rather than as, well, adversity. He takes Bakugou's insult and turns it on its head, making it a source of pride for him that reminds him how far he's come. Consider this scene between him and best girl Ochako.
You know what? I like Deku.
It could make a great hero name. Plus, I think it sounds kinda cute.
Deku it is! Just like that? Weren't you saying that it was an insult? Paradigm shift! My whole world is upside down!
By calling his decision to take on the name Deku a paradigm shift, Deku is almost explicitly stating that he is taking power away from Bakugou and using his derision to make himself stronger. The ability to refuse to back down in the face of hardship is about as shonen as it gets, but it is one of the core tenets that makes Deku deserving of his success rather than just fortunate. That said, Deku is lucky, just not in the way he thinks he is. Deku has low self-esteem, mostly as a result of Bakugou's ass-crackery, so he doesn't give himself credit for many of his successes. He says that his plan at the USJ was a gamble, meaning that they were lucky that it worked. He denies that he's qualified to be class rep, despite the fact that the most bureaucratic and uppity student in the school thinks otherwise. And he describes his initial meeting with All Might as a chance encounter. The fact of the matter is that while there is a definite element of luck involved in Deku's success, he puts himself in positions that allow him to get lucky. All Might stepping in at the last minute to save Deku from the sludge villain is luck, but Deku clinging onto his leg when he flies away, setting off the chain of events that leads to All Might becoming his mentor, is not. Deku is lucky, but not in the same way that Bakugou is lucky. Bakugou was born with an incredible talent that let him coast through life. Deku forces himself into situations that increase his chances of getting what he wants. He makes his own luck. I have like 4 more pages of notes left about these two, but this video is already running kinda long, so I think I'm gonna wrap it up here. Thank you all so much for the incredible support that my first video received. Over 1,000 subscribers is no joke, but we all know I won't be a real YouTuber until I'm getting death threats and shilling for Crunchyroll, so be sure to leave a like and tell me to kill myself in the comments below. Also, I'm pretty sure I fixed the audio issues from last time, so let me know if those are resolved or not. Thanks. Until next time, this is Explanation Point, signing off. Or maybe signing out. Signing off, out. Signing out.